Today on Zimwaves TV, where facts are sacred but sarcasm is policy, we bring you a week so drenched in absurdity it could only be sponsored by the Zimbabwean government. Here is the rundown of the past week's stories. Our lead story: President Emmerson Mnangagwa made a public appearance and didn't say a word. Yes, the man famous for inventing sentences that go nowhere finally chose to say absolutely nothing at the grand reopening of Mnangagwa. The place was renovated, the ribbon was cut, the people were gathered, and the cameras were rolling. But instead of speaking, the president looked around, smiled like he had misplaced his brain, and walked off stage. Some called it presidential restraint, others blamed jet lag, but Zimwaves, being the honest news anarchists we are, will call it what it is: dementia deluxe. Now with added silence. Of course, when you have just handed Mnangagwa over to your sons and your wife after it conveniently caught fire, maybe shutting up is the only smart move left. While the president was busy mumbling nothing at Mbare, the courts were loud and proud, denying bail to 98 protesters whose biggest crime was chanting Mnangagwa must go, and maybe, just maybe, whistling. Yes, the police reports read like a budget thriller. Bricks were thrown, Freedom Square was invaded, and the accused dared to call for change in public. In Zimbabwe, that's practically armed robbery. Magistrate Shane Sumatova, clearly gunning for a loyalty medal, declared the group a national security threat and denied them bail. According to him, if released, they might, wait for it, do it again. Heaven forbid Zimbabweans find their voice and use it in public. What's next? Asking for electricity? Demanding functional hospitals? Calling for free elections in the economy? We are going to be arrested for just demanding basic goods. And speaking for people in prison for speaking their minds, let's check in on Blessed Mhlanga, the journalist who thought freedom of the press was still a thing. Poor guy. All he did was interview a man who said Mnangagwa is corrupt and should step down. The response: immediate arrest under the Cyber and Data Protection Act. A law that sounds like it protects your data but actually just protects ED's feelings. Mhlanga is now suing Justice Minister Ziyambi, Information Minister Jen van Swere, and Attorney General Prince Machaya. Why? Because the Constitution, that ancient document that the government only uses to swat flies, says journalists have the right to ask questions, and Zimbabweans have the right to hear the answers. We'll see how far that logic gets him. So far, it's earned him over a month in remand, while actual criminals are in Dubai shopping for gold. Before we continue roasting the powers that be, a quick word to the wise, or at least the ones with businesses to promote. If you are a brand, a hustler, a rebel entrepreneur, or just someone selling anything from airtime to air fryers, Zimwaves TV is the channel you want to be seen on. We don't just talk news, we make noise. With a growing audience across Zimbabwe, the diaspora, and everyone tired of state propaganda, this is the boldest platform to advertise. Whether you want a shout out, a skit, a banner, a full-blown parody ad, we've got you covered. Your product will sit right between presidential silence and protester bail denial. What more do you want? Just drop us an email or hit our socials. We will make your business louder than a ZANU-PF rally, but with actual results. Advertise with Zimwaves TV, where the truth sells, and so can you. But don't worry, if you are not a journalist or a protester, there is still time to get arrested. Just start a non-governmental organization. Mnangagwa has officially signed the Private Voluntary Organizations Amendment Act, a piece of legislation so paranoid it makes Stalin look like a social worker. This new law allows the government to spy on, control, deregister, dissolve, and imprison anyone who runs an NGO, especially if they are caught doing suspicious things like feeding the hungry or advocating for women's rights. The law carries up to 35 years in prison for people who don't align their charity work with the government propaganda. So next time you are handing out food parcels, make sure you shout Pamperine ZANU-PF or you will be saving Sadza in Chukurobi. While we are on it, you should just brand your food parcels with the ZANU-PF logos. Now, let's talk about the most underreported political crime of the year: doing your job. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Former Environment Minister Stembi Sonyoni did not get fired for bribes like the regime tried to spin it. No. She got booted for blocking a Chinese coal mining deal inside Hwange National Park. Yes, she tried to protect Zimbabwe wildlife from Chinese bulldozers, and for that, she was thrown under the ZANU-PF bus. So next time you see a Chinese excavator parked next to an elephant, just remember, Nyoni tried to stop it. And in return, she was replaced by Evelyn Ndlovu, a woman whose only qualification is a compatibility with silence. Evelyn's old post, now occupied by Albert Nguluve, Mugabe's former security chief, because who better to run Matabeleland South than a man who was trained to guard a dictator? Recycling, it's not just for plastics anymore. It's how ZANU-PF keeps the past alive. And just when you think your jaw couldn't drop any lower, Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube steps forward with a poetic flourish and announces that Zimbabwe has paid its first $3 million installment to white farmers who lost land during the 2000 invasions. That's right. While you can't afford bus fare or fuel, the government is busy writing IOUs to white commercial farmers in the hopes that the West might smile and let us back into the financial system. Forget the billions still owed to war veterans. Forget the collapsing hospitals. Forget the teachers working for groceries. Mthuli is too busy fulfilling a 2020 agreement that promises $3.5 billion in compensation. And guess what? This week's $3 million covers 1% of the first batch. 1%. If that's not economic theater, I don't know what is. But don't worry, not everything is falling apart. The Premier Soccer League is giving us moments of joy, confusion, and existential despair. Scotland FC, the newcomers with fat pockets and even fatter egos, hammered Bikita Minerals 3-0 at Rufaro Stadium. Thanks to Walter Msona, Mutokozi Simsebe, and a very generous own goal. Dynamos, the once mighty Dimbare continued their slow crawl towards irrelevance, losing 1-0 to Manica Diamonds. Simba Bora, MWOs, and Green Fuel all picked up wins, while Highlanders and Caps United are currently floating somewhere near the relegation zone, right next to our hopes for the national reform. But hey, at least someone is keeping the score. So, let's sum up the week in case you are still reeling from the madness. President Mnangagwa opened Mbare Musika and said nothing. Maybe it was dementia, maybe it was guilt, maybe he just couldn't find the right lie fast enough. 98 protesters remain jailed for whistling and demanding change. Apparently, ED must go is now a national security threat. Meanwhile, actual criminals remain at large, some even in cabinet. Journalist Blessed Mhlanga is still in remand prison for interviewing a guy who dared to speak his mind. Freedom of the press, not under this regime, not on ED's internet. And Blessed has taken the issue further to the Constitutional Court. The PVO Amendment Act is now law. That means NGOs can be shut down, frozen, or imprisoned for daring to care. 35 years for feeding the hungry if ZANU didn't approve the menu. Stembi Sonyoni was fired, not for corruption, but for doing her job. She blocked a Chinese coal mining deal in a national park, so naturally she had to go. But the government had to give a reason, so they accused her of bribery. The government paid $3 million to white farmers while teachers earned peanuts, hospitals rot, and war vets remain unpaid. But don't worry, it's all part of a debt clearing plan, whatever that means. And in sports, Scotland FC is winning big, Dynamos is losing hard, and Caps United is still trying to remember what a goal looks like. At least someone in this country still knows how to score. That's the week Zimbabwe, where the constitution is optional, protest is criminal, and silence is presidential. This is Zimwaves TV, your trusted source for truth, laughter, and the kind of journalism that gets people arrested. If you are not subscribed yet, ask yourself, are you even resisting properly? Hit that like button like you are slapping a ZANU-PF campaign poster off your front gate. And remember, silence isn't golden anymore. It's what Mnangagwa does when the teleprompter is turned off. Let's meet next week Saturday for another week's rundown on this brand new program on Zimwaves TV called The Week in Retrospect.